In the dry winds of the American West in the late 1800s, a small frontier town rose from dust and promise. It appeared on no official maps and left behind no clear records. Travelers spoke of it quietly, then stopped speaking at all. Today, only faint traces suggest it ever existed. In the early decades of the 1800s, the American West was not yet a single idea. It was a shifting frontier of rumor, ambition, and unmarked trails. People moved toward it with little knowledge of what they would find, driven by land notices, whispers of trade, or the belief that anything was better than what they had left behind. In this uncertain landscape, a town began to take form along a dry riverbed that flowed only in spring. No official charter marked its creation. The people who gathered there came from scattered directions. Some had traveled along wagon roads. Others had followed trappers or traders. The place began as a stopover, a loosely arranged collection of tents and rough-built shelters. There was no central authority, only the practical need for tools, food, and water. The era was defined by movement. The United States expanded its territory. Surveyors measured land but rarely reached the edges of the frontier. Railroads were discussed but not yet built in many regions. The town grew in this gap between planning and reality. It became a resting point for those heading further west and for those who had already gone too far and could not return. A few families stayed through the seasons. They built wooden structures, simple and functional. A trading post appeared. A blacksmith set up his forge. Livestock grazed along the sparse grass near the dry river. At night, campfires marked where strangers gathered. Their stories mixed fact and imagination, but over time the settlement began to feel permanent. Yet permanence was not guaranteed. Records were rarely kept. The nearest government office was many days away by horse. Births, deaths, and marriages passed unnoticed by officials. The town lived only in the memory of those who saw it. The people worked with a steady awareness of risk. Droughts came and went. Travel remained dangerous. Communication with the outside world was irregular. Still, there was a sense of forward motion. The settlement represented hope for a life carved out of open land, where social expectations were fewer and opportunities seemed closer. By the late 1800s, the town had a name spoken locally, though it was never written into any ledger. It existed because people needed it to exist. Supplies arrived. Goods were traded. Trails converged nearby. Travelers found shelter and continued onward. Those who stayed believed they were building something that would last. They did not yet know that little trace of it would survive. As the town settled into routine, its daily life began to follow recognizable rhythms. Wagons arrived with goods, leaving again with supplies or news. Children gathered near the edges of the settlement, playing in the dust while adults repaired fences or tended fires. The trading post became a center of activity. Conversations there shaped decisions more than any formal authority could. Weather patterns defined the year. When the riverbed filled briefly with water, there was a sense of relief. Crops were planted in narrow plots of workable soil. When the water receded, people relied on stored barrels in shallow wells. The danger of scarcity was constant, but so was the determination to endure. Many residents had already left farms, towns, or cities elsewhere. This place was meant to be their last move. With time, the settlement took on clearer form. Paths became streets through repeated use. Buildings stood in rough alignment. Travelers described the town as quiet but orderly. There were no grand plans. No church bell tower. No courthouse. Yet there was a fragile stability shaped by shared need. The town existed outside the attention of distant officials. War, politics, and economic reports rarely reached it in detail. What mattered were storms, soil, and the fragile trade routes that connected it to other remote communities. Occasionally, prospectors passed through, following new rumors of minerals in nearby hills. They stayed briefly, then vanished into the distance. Some returned. Others did not. Uncertainty deepened over time. A series of dry seasons reduced the river's brief flow. The wells became unreliable. Trading routes shifted as new settlements appeared along more reliable trails. The town's isolation, once an asset, became a burden. Supplies grew scarce. Illness spread more easily among the small population. Key decisions emerged without formal records. Some families debated leaving. Others pushed to remain, convinced that conditions would improve. There was tension between hope and realism. The settlement had taken years to build. Abandoning it felt like erasing that effort. Travel conditions worsened. Stories circulated of nearby towns gaining rail connections. The contrast was stark. Where others grew, this town remained small, tied to an unreliable landscape. The residents faced a quiet crisis. Each choice to stay or leave carried weight. There were no clear leaders, only shared conversations at night beneath the open sky. Gradually, the tone of daily life changed. Repairs went unfinished. New construction slowed. The trading post received fewer deliveries. The town still functioned, but its future no longer felt open. The people sensed that time was moving past them. The West was being mapped, settled, and recorded elsewhere. Their small community did not appear on these maps. No single event defined the turning point. It arrived as a gradual shift, a recognition that survival here might no longer be possible. The decisions made in those final months would determine whether the town could endure, or whether it would fade quietly from memory. The final chapter of the town's existence unfolded in silence rather than drama. One season arrived with even less water than before. The riverbed stayed dry. Wells dropped to their lowest levels. Crops failed quickly. Livestock weakened. The people watched these changes with a calm that came from long familiarity with hardship, but this time the situation did not improve. Families gathered to speak about what came next. There were no written minutes, no official decisions. Instead, choices were made household by household. Some prepared wagons. Others waited, hoping for late rains. The blacksmith quieted his forge. The trading post shelves thinned. The sound of daily work gave way to long pauses. Illness returned, likely caused by poor water and exhaustion. Graves were dug at the edge of the settlement. No headstones were carved. The markers were simple wooden posts that would not last long in the weather. These losses carried weight, yet life went on in a muted rhythm. People spoke less. Movements slowed. Eventually, the first wagons left. They took only what they could carry. The departure was not marked by ceremony. Dust rose behind the wheels and drifted away. Others followed in the weeks after. The town emptied in stages, never fully at once. Dogs wandered the unused paths. Doors remained open in houses with no occupants. The settlement did not collapse. It faded. Structures stood but were no longer maintained. Wind loosened boards. Roofs shifted. Sand and dust collected inside rooms once filled with conversation. The trading post door creaked in the afternoon heat. A few individuals stayed longer than the rest, either unwilling or unable to leave. Their final days were unrecorded. When the last resident departed, the town passed from community into absence. There was no note left behind. No record sent to any office. The buildings remained for a time, but without purpose. Travelers used other routes. Surveyors mapped nearby land without mentioning this place. The town became invisible through neglect rather than intention. Years later, weather and time completed the erasure. Wood rotted. Posts fell. The graves lost their markers. Animals passed through and left no sign they had been there. Only faint depressions in the earth hinted at former structures. Without people to remember it, the town ceased to exist in all but the vaguest recollections. Stories about it survived briefly in nearby settlements, told by those who had once lived there or passed through. But as decades passed, even those memories ended. The town had left almost nothing behind. No official records. No photographs. No maps. Only the quiet fact that, for a short time in the 1800s American West, people had built lives in a place that the world later forgot. The town is gone now. The people who once lived here are gone as well. Their voices ended long ago. Their names have slipped away. No records remain. No ledgers. No maps. Nothing to show who stayed. Nothing to show who left. The buildings once stood in the open wind. Now they are gone. Wood rotted. Nails loosened. Roofs fell in slow stages. Rains washed the dust into the ground. Seasons passed. The remains blended with the soil. The streets once carried footsteps. Boots. Wagon wheels. Children running. Now there is only empty land. The wind crosses it without pause. It leaves no trace. The graves once marked the edge of town. Simple posts stood above shallow earth. They marked lives that ended here. They marked people who worked, who hoped, who endured hardship. Now even those posts have disappeared. Grass and dust have covered them. There is no sign of where they were. Memories lasted for a while. Travelers remembered the town. Former residents spoke of it in quiet tones. But time thinned those memories. People moved on. Generations passed. Stories faded. The town was never written into official history. No clerk noted its founding. No agency recorded its end. It existed between lines. Between maps. Between recognized places. Today the land lies silent. There are no walls. No tools. No smoke from chimneys. Only wind. Only sky. Only the faint shape of what once stood here. History continues elsewhere. New towns rise. Old names are remembered. Dates are taught. Books are written. But not about this place. This town slips past notice. It remains outside the story. Unmarked. Unlisted. Unspoken. It disappears into silence. Into plain earth. Into absence. And there it stays. Forgotten, these stories are rarely told. Subscribe if you want to hear the next one.